They're made for cold water.
Yep.
But I'm not. Not anymore. I used to be.
I know.
I'm sorry.
I agree.
But I love to watch those dogs. They're puppies. They're just a year old. Wow. And I'm not going to hunt these dogs. So I just love having them. So back to
Yeah. Hey, Carla.
Is everything going well for you?
Yeah. Oh, dear. You ready? Okay. Good evening. The Middlesex County Public Schools School Board meeting for February the 14th, 2022 is now in session. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. The chair will entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
We're in closed. entertain a motion to go out of closed session. Your second?
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Pursuant to the Code of Virginia, the board discussed personnel matters during closed session. Matters discussed in closed session have been added to the consent agenda and other parts of the agenda as action and information items. When members of the board certify that only lawful matters were discussed in closed session, please answer via roll call vote.
Dr. Burnett,
Yes.
Mrs. Sobczak,
Yes.
Mr. Harrow,
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. McMurtry.
Yes.
Thank you.
If we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This evening, we're going to have a treat. This is Daniel. Bring it on. Can you hear me?
Members of the board, Madam Chair.
Good evening.
I'm excited to be here with you. Happy Valentine's Day to you all.
Thank you.
And for those of you who do not live in elementary land, it was superhero day today at school. Into the tutu. It was a good opportunity to wear one. So I'm here with you tonight just to share a few educational highlights. And I really wanted to share a few things relative to student and family engagement, because that has shifted what it looks like for us since the pandemic started. We quickly recognize that engaging families and learning and engaging students would be at a different level. A lot has shifted. And so just in the past week, we were excited to host 2 virtual family nights. And so you see on the next slide, our pre-K teachers, they do not know they were screenshotted. Pretty cute picture of them. They hosted a literacy night for our pre-K students. There was a whole lady who swallowed some snow, and ironically enough, when they planned this, February is typically a cold month. They got sent home with hot chocolate, and it was not cold that night. It was actually pretty warm. It was in the 60s, I believe. But our teachers and our paraprofessionals did a wonderful job leading this night, engaging kids in the reading of the story, and then they each had their own little take-home snowman that they got to create and design themselves. We were excited. So when COVID in March of 2020, and when we shifted to virtual learning for the upcoming school year, one of the things we noticed that I don't think we had intended is that for a lot of our families, they were more engaged than they'd ever been in learning. And that's because we were in their homes every day. Our virtual families, our pre-K families, we were seeing them several times a week. And so there have been some really positive things that we can take away from COVID. The virtual family nights have been one. The next slide, you'll see we have hosted a few family nights that are mathematic based, and this is boxcars and one-eyed Jack. So essentially all of our families forward to actually next year hosting one once a month paired with spirit nights, which have been nice. So next week, I wanted to share with you all why I was here this evening. I have another group that I'm going to allow you to share a little bit of what they've been doing behind the scenes. but Virginia Cared for Kindness Week. There's a quote that resonates with me, and it's just because she carries it well doesn't mean it isn't heavy. And I think heavy has been redefined for all of us since the pandemic. We all carry a new level of heavy. So I encourage families, we share through our cult headlines some resources for families to get involved in how you can talk about kindness, what that really means, and how you can celebrate and embrace others. We do these with Spirit Days, but it's really not about the fun dress up that goes with it. It's really about the conversations that we have within the classrooms and within your own house about how we can embrace others. And so I share that with our families that are here tonight, with board members, to check out what we've got going on throughout the week. I'd like to welcome Ms. Wilkins. She's going to share a group of our students in the LEAP program, some things they've been focused on that relate to student engagement this year.
Thank you, Ms. Daniel. I'm Katie Wilkins. I'm the coordinator of gifted education here, and I have, for our educational highlights tonight, wanted to share with you a project that my fifth grade LEAP students have been working on this year. And I've had the privilege of working with these students for several years now, and I'm really, really proud of the work that they've done. So if I could call my students to come on up to the front, please. All right, so the boat projects that we did, we worked in 3 different phases for this project. And this is something special that the fifth grade LEAP students get to do. And as you'll see up there, our entire group is Austin Chen, Claire Dyes, Nola Gardner, Jacob Goodwin, Ford Hall, Joshua Huntley, Journey Jones, Josiah Miller, Macy Powell, Lillian Ranger, Jacob Smith, and Jaden Tang. And tonight we have Macy, Joshua, Claire, Journey, and Jacob up here to share with you tonight. So that picture up there was from our testing day, and which was a really fun day. But the phase 1 of our boat projects, we built boats to hold the most weight. We learned all about weight distribution, water displacement, when we learned about how cruise ships and those big container ships that we see going down the bay can hold all of that weight. And we actually created the boats to hold as much weight as possible. And as you can see here, they used recycled materials to build the boats, and they had to they had to measure, and they had to kind of fit in some constraints and make their boats cool looking and give them neat names. And the students worked together on this project, and again, you can see us on testing day, and that was really an exciting day. Phase 2 of our project, after we talked about how boats float and how water is displaced, we wanted to build some speed boats. So we took our designs and what here, some of their boats here to show you, and would love to answer any questions while we're waiting for our next slide. If you have any, you guys want to say anything about your boat?
is mainly focused on carrying as much weight as it can. So I made a huge hull with two supporter buoys on the boat, and then just tried to part of our project is in progress right now. And we have taken video and used our green screen in the classroom, and we are going to create posters and information, little informational videos and posters where you can scan a QR code.
Oh, nice.
And you can see the students presenting about each of their boats and saying how they made it. And so we're still working on that part of it. You have any questions for us?
That's a great project. My husband's always asking, why don't those boats flip over? They're so high, and carrying so much. It's cool.
We learned all about it.
Thanks for coming. We really appreciate it. Thanks for taking your time.
Thank you for having us.
Are your parents or grandparents with you tonight? Would you have them stand up? Parents, come on. Let me see you. There we go. There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing them. It's great. That's from Ms. Dana. Very good. Thank you all for coming. We really appreciate that. It's so good to see our students and their projects and all the neat things that they're doing. Thank you, Ms. Wilkins. Let's see. Recognitions?
Recognitions, yes. I'll first add a note just for those who are listening and participating at home. I know there's been some, I think, sound issues, but I know Mr. Dunkel is working on that. And I think we're good now. So if you're at home, that was a couple of text messages I got as that sound was going out. So if you're at home, I think we're good to go now, and we will move on back to recognition. So it is School Board Appreciation Month. February is. And I just have a few things to say about that, in that the foundation of student success is year-long leadership and advocacy and support from our school board. We're proud of our division, and School Board Appreciation Month is the time to recognize and celebrate the accomplishments of our elected trustees. In Middlesex County Public Schools, school board members must develop policies and make tough decisions on complex educational and social issues impacting the entire community. They bear responsibility for an annual budget of over 19 million, 1,200 students, 215 employees, and 4 buildings plus a central office. Too often, we neglect to recognize the dedication and hard work of these men and women who represent us. So thank you all for what you do and for being here for us. I have some certificates that I will hand out very quickly to you. We are missing Mr. Reed tonight. We'll hold on to his certificate, but this is just a simple thing, not as good as the chocolates that Peggy left for you. Just a certificate from me here.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Thank you, ma'am.
And busy since you got on here. And I'll move back to the microphone quickly because I also want to let you know that it is School Board Clerk Appreciation Week. And we have Ms. Peggy Jordan as our school board clerk, and then we have Karen Murray as our deputy clerk. They are 2 people. I know this board will let you know how they help keep the board straight, but they're also 2 of the people in the office that help keep me going in the right direction also when it comes to scheduling and finance and those things. And so we want to thank Peggy and Karen and appreciate them for what they do also.
Absolutely. Couldn't do without them. Thank you, ladies, for all that you do for us, because you do keep us straight. There's no doubt about it. Additions and corrections to the agenda. I believe there's just one, the financial update. Is there a motion to approve that addition?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any questions about it? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. Public announcements. February is Black History Month, School Board Appreciation Month. National, February the 7th through the 11th is National School Counseling Appreciation Week. February the 15th is the Joint Board of Supervisors School Board Budget Meeting at 4 p.m. at the Historic Courthouse. February the 18th is the end of interim grading period. February the 21st, President's Day, school division is closed. February the 25th, the interim report cards sent out. February the 28th, the budget public hearing is at St. Cloud Walker in the auditorium at 6:30. March 9th, early release day, students only, and March 14th is the next school board meeting here at St. Cloud Walker Middle School in the auditorium at 6:30. The floor is now open for public comment. Could you please come down front, state your name and your location, please? Okay.
I want to talk about my daughter wearing a mask in school. I will not have her wearing a mask anymore. I don't want her getting in trouble for being in school without a mask. But the mask does absolutely nothing. They say follow the science. I researched it. Okay, follow the science. Science says that the virus, the coronavirus, is smaller than most of your oxygen cells. So if you can smell through your mask, you can get the virus through your mask. The mask does nothing. I don't want my daughter wearing a mask because it hinders her breathing and her learning. Much of her learning is watching somebody else's expressions on their face. I don't want her wearing a mask. I am also having issues with, I want to know about the school system. If you're teaching CRT, if you're teaching critical part of the 1600 stuff, and is there any transsexuals in the school? I want to be aware of it.
I'm sorry, could I get your name?
Chuck Rasmussen.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Rasmussen. Appreciate you speaking. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Bob Griffith. We live in Deltaville. My son Liam is in the 3rd grade at Middlesex Elementary. I'd also like to discuss the mask mandates in school. I also would not prefer him to wear a mask. I've been a firefighter, paramedic in Newport News for 14 years. I also ride the ambulance in Abingdon and Matthews, so I have firsthand experience with dealing with the coronavirus. I responded to many adult COVID patients the past 2 years. I can't remember a single child. I'll be completely clear, okay? This is not a political statement on my part. I'm also not against masking. If you choose to mask your own child, it's perfectly fine with me. But what I am against is my son being forced to wear a mask that he nor my wife or I want him to wear. The reason is simple. He's a healthy child. Unmasking him in school will not cause him to contract COVID-19 and die. Statistics are on the side of his, on his side, and on the side of the most. Dropped their mask mandate last week. And if you find the video of the children cheering after their teacher told them they don't have to wear masks the next day, I urge you to watch it because it's pretty amazing. As with all these existing school mask policies, no real world data indicate that these masks decrease transmission in school settings. Obviously, this data matters greatly. Masks are required to be very tight fit to be effective. And it's not possible for kids. They play with them, they put their hands on them, they touch them. If they get wet, they don't work anymore. N95s are not approved or sized for children. And you actually need to get fit tested for N95s for it to work properly, even an adult. I've had to do it before. I can appreciate the necessity to mask our children when this all started. You know, we didn't know how it was going to transmit. You're all scared, and I get it, but it's time to take them off. For the past 2 years, the layers of mythology around COVID-19 mitigation in schools have been peeled away, each time without producing increases in COVID-19. Schools didn't become hotspots when they reopened last year, nor when they reduced physical distancing, nor when they eliminated deep cleaning protocols. These layers were peeled away because the evidence supporting them was weak, and they all had substantial downsides. That's taken from an article in the Atlantic from this year. Also, wearing masks affects the development of our young children at school. They, like Mr. Rasmussen, I think, said that children are visual learners. So if they don't see the expression, they have a hard time learning. The UK, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, they don't follow the CDC's guidelines. They follow the World Health Organization guidelines. They totally recommend masking children ages 5 and younger because it doesn't in the overall, masks are not in the overall interest of the child, and many children are unable to wear them properly. Even for ages 6 to 11, the WHO doesn't routinely recommend masks because of the potential impact of wearing a mask on learning and psychosocial development, not even a mention of their health. The WHO also explicitly counsels against masking children during physical activities, including running and jumping on the playground. So here's the most important point that you should all pay attention to. The CDC and the World Health Organization have completely opposite guidelines for masking children. And the reason why is obvious. No definitive studies exist proving that masking healthy children is beneficial. You want? If other parents want their children to wear a mask, I have no problem with that. If you want to wear a mask, I have no problem with that. However, if I know my son gets COVID-19, he may have flu-like symptoms for a couple of days, but he will be fine, just like the flu, just like everything else. Please allow our children to do the right. Please do the right thing and allow our children to come to school without masks if we, the parents, choose. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Good evening. I'm Patty Larson. I'm from Locust Hill, and I'm a teacher at MES. I'm speaking on behalf of a group of concerned teachers, ladies. We hope that you consider dropping the mask mandate sooner rather than later. We are concerned about our students' education and their emotional and mental well-being. Phonemic awareness is one of the best predictors of how well children will learn to read during the first 2 years of school. We know what the last 2 years have looked like in the classroom, so you can imagine our concerns as teachers about the gaps in our students' mastery of phonemic awareness, causing them to struggle to become proficient readers. They must see our mouths and we must see theirs for them to be able to manipulate the sounds. Our students' mental well-being needs to be a priority. First graders love to draw people. However, I've noticed lately that when they draw a person, they only draw their eyes. They do not draw their friends' nose or mouths because they don't see them. So when our children don't see our smiles, they aren't able to transfer that to their own drawings and into their everyday life. In an article in Psychology Today, it states that when you smile or receive a smile from someone else, it lowers your stress levels. And let's be honest, the last 2 years have been extremely stressful. Smiles are contagious. Mrs. Socek, you taught many of us who are here tonight, and your smile always brightened our US history class. And Dr. Seitz, we taught 3rd grade together, and we had a student that we knew immediately what kind of day she was gonna have when she got off that bus by her facial expression. And we knew what we needed to do to make her day better. But for the past 2 years, we haven't been able to do that for our children. We have not been able to see their facial expressions, and they haven't been able to see ours so that we know how to better help them. So I do hope that you consider dropping the mask mandate as soon as possible so that we can continue to support our students academically and emotionally. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Larson.
Hello, I'm Lillian Taylor and I'm from the Hartfield District. While you have heard from parents and teachers, I thought as a student, I would come up here and kind of tell you all how the masks have affected me. Going throughout elementary school, middle school, and some high school, we had so much fun being able to see, like she said, each other's smiles, brighten each other's day. If one person was down, I knew that I could smile at them and they would become better. Now, while having to wear a mask at school has been extremely, extremely difficult. Not only hearing teachers, if you're in the back of a classroom, you cannot hear them with these masks on. It is horrible. And if you're sitting in the back, they can't hear you if you're trying to answer a question. Another thing, Governor Youngkin said this whole thing is based on what the parents want. Nobody's going to be standing at that door telling a student wearing a mask to come in, you can't wear your mask. Nobody's saying that. They can still wear their mask if they're very concerned. I know when Dad had cancer and he was in the hospital, I went to work a lot. I wore my mask. I know a lot of people that have grandparents and it is very difficult for them. They don't want them to get sick and worse things happen. So they can wear their mask. They're not going to get bullied. The teachers are not going to discriminate against them. That is not going to happen at all. I know the teachers and they are amazing. So, but it's just so, it'd be so nice to breathe. And with these masks on, you're breathing in your own carbon dioxide, which is not good for you. So by breathing out, not breathing that in, it would be so much better for students. Like we wouldn't maybe say have headaches as much and everything. So I just think that if you would consider making them optional, you know, like I said, they're not gonna get discriminated against if they wear the mask. I know actually today, we were talking about it in class, you know, just doing some extra work. And one of the students asked another student, you know, what's your standpoint? Would you wear a mask? And she goes, yes. While, you know, some other people don't, that's perfectly fine. She goes, but I would wear a mask because at home, I have older family and I don't want them to get sick. So I would wear my mask if they were optional. Wonderful. Wear a mask. If you don't feel comfortable not wearing it, then don't wear your mask. I know if my mom or one of my family members got very sick, I would wear my mask in a heartbeat. I don't like him. I really don't, but I would. Another thing that's not really on the mask, I'm sorry to bring it up, but kind of talking also about mask, dress code. I know a student didn't wear a mask one day and he got sent to ISS because it's not dress code. Honestly, dress code is stupid. I'm sorry to say it, but when you think you're going out in the real world, nobody's gonna care. Say my sweatshirt, it's not fingertip length right now, okay. Nobody in the real world is gonna, if you're going to the gym and you say I have to stop at the grocery store, nobody is gonna look at you and be like, oh, that is not okay to wear. Wearing them at school, now I can understand. This is what I always say. If it is covering my butt and my, you know, front, my mom, if y'all know my mom, she is strict. She does not want me going out in booty shorts and a tank top. So I always say to myself, if I can look at mom and she's like, oh, you look good today, then I'm doing something right.
Thank you, Lillian. We appreciate it so much. We
Okay.
got the point.
Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you.
So my name is Kendall Lucas and I'm from the Saluda district, but I'm also from the Hartfield district. I am a senior at Middlesex High School and I'm wishing to finish high school as normal as possible this year. The seniors this year have missed out on half of sophomore and junior year. And every class below us has also missed out on half of a year and another half. Including that, we missed 2 homecoming dances due to COVID and we almost barely got prom. Well, we did barely get prom, but with that, we had to wear masks at prom. Most students I know do not wear masks outside of school, or if they do wear a mask, it is like the one I am wearing right now, which is not a considered proper mask. So what's the point of wearing it? And at school, we sit 3 feet apart with the mask on, we follow the guidelines, all of that, and then we're allowed to participate in sports and be in close contact, but without a mask on. That's a little confusing to me. And I have some data from a neighboring school district that went mask optional on January 24th that I would love to share with you. Cases stated in this are positive only cases and not the quarantine numbers, i.e. the close contact. It's not that. So on the week of January 16th, Gloucester County Public Schools had 233 positive cases for students and 42 for employees. That was before mask optional. As of February 7th through 10th, 2 weeks after mask optional, there were only 29 positive students and 4 positive teachers and employees and staff. And saying staff includes everybody in the school system, payroll office, school board, all of that. As presented from this data, you can see an obvious drop in cases. And honestly, Gloucester is not that far from Middlesex. They have a comparable 46.1 cases per day, as Middlesex has 43.4. That's a very close statistic. They also have 23%. We have 23% and they have 27%. But giving the mask optional gives the students who do want to wear the mask that option, and it is, like Lily just said, not discriminated against. Teachers do not care if you wear the mask. Other students won't care if you wear the mask. And as of right now, I see plenty of students wearing masks like this, wearing them like this, and then getting told repeatedly to put them back on. And every time they get told, they just do it, and then it slips back down again. So what's the point of wearing the mask if you're not going to wear it right? And lastly, I just urge you to please reconsider and join the other schools close to our district, and just saying that we need to be mask optional. I think it would be better for the students all around. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hello, my name is Kendra Hauser. I'm a seventh grade teacher here at St. Clair Walker. I'm here on behalf of my students. I give them the prompt that if they wanted to write a letter either for or against the mask mandate, you get it to me before 6 o'clock tonight, and I had a handful send them in. I was going to read them for you. First one. Dear school district, I would like to share my opinion on the mask mandate and whether it should be optional. The mask definitely has pros and cons, more pros to some and more cons to others. I feel that we should be able to choose if we wear a mask or not. I think we should be able to choose what we do as our own people by wearing masks, etc. We can't control whether or not we get COVID, and I find that the masks aren't helping. If we don't end up wearing masks, others can choose if they want to wear one just to be safe, and that's their own opinion. I'd rather not wear a mask because it gets too hot in classes. It's harder to talk to others with them on. They're constantly falling below our noses, causing us to get in trouble for not having our mask up, etc. Kids and staff members are still able to get sick, even if only a few kids or someone has their mask down in school. The mask blocks our own germs from getting spread to other people. So for example, if I was talking to someone and I had my mask on and they didn't, or the other way around, one of us would still be passing germs. So that goes for everyone in the school. Thank you for your time. From Abby Sluter. Masks are bad because I can't breathe and can't talk, and it hurts my nose, and I'm breathing in my own bacteria and it gets me sick. Austin Weber. This is more of a sign. No masks by Tristan. I think we should be able to pick if we wear a mask or not, because even if I'm wearing a mask, I can get COVID. And if I'm sitting next to someone with COVID, I still have to get sent home if I'm wearing a mask or not. Amby Holt. And then last one. I would like to thank you for taking the time to hear my opinion. Our community, as we know it, has changed over the last 2 years. We are forced to wear a mask covering that restricts our communication and emotions. Our immune system is being hindered due to lack of exposure to everyday germs. I have done some research on current legislation in the General Assembly. What I found was that Bill SB 739 would likely receive support from both sides, and it is being signed by the governor on Tuesday. SB 739 will make masks optional in every day school district by parents' choice. We, the students, are taught to make our own decision as we grow. My hope is that we get to make a decision to wear a mask or not. Regards, Kaylin Schultz. That is your 7th graders' opinions for the ones that sent something in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Sal.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Sonia Pender from Urbana. The U.S. Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. said, "Your liberty to swing your fist ends where my nose begins." I humbly submit that any consideration to assume a liberty that is not that of the school board or the government violates this very tenet of Justice Holmes's statement. Issuance of Executive Order 1 reaffirms, and 2 reaffirms a parental's fundamental right to make decisions concerning the upbringing, the education, and the care of the parent's child, as outlined in Virginia Code 1 TAC 240.1, rights of parents. The second point I'd like to make is to evaluate the current data, as this gentleman pointed out earlier. Trends in COVID cases within Middlesex and even within the Three Rivers District are significantly down, particularly when focusing on school-age children. The numbers in the last 4 days indicate very, very significant improvement. And so I encourage you to take a look at the data. In light of the trends, it would seem that our actions are not aligned with that of the science and the data published by the VDH and the CDC. Today, both children and adults have access to vaccines, boosters, test to stay programs. Education is abundant, and there are many resources available to both parents and students to become better informed as to risks and the healthcare considerations so that they can make choices that are best for them. And finally, as our teacher coalition pointed out, I wanted to take just a few moments for the board to consider the long-term effects of mask use on school-age children. While there are no significant longitudinal studies to evaluate the long-term effects of COVID masks on school-age children, several studies have evaluated the impact of mask wearing on cognitive development, emotional stability, and speech awareness. The American Speech Language Hearing Association, the National Professional Association representing speech therapists, states that referrals of children to speech therapy have increased significantly since the pandemic began. Pediatric neuroscientists developed a study recently that concludes that masking interferes with nonverbal communication and emotional bonding. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I submit that it is the parent's role to know what is best for their child, and I submit that in light of that, parents be afforded the opportunity to decide what is best for their own child. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Katie Carnes and I live in Hartfield. I just have a couple points that I wanted to bring up because there were some concerns about possible bullying at the last meeting. A lot of the comments were directed towards if the mask mandate was dropped, that certain children who chose to wear their mask would be bullied. Either by, I think the reference was by students. There have been some things going around online that it would be teachers, but none of our teachers would ever do that. I couldn't imagine. I have two children that go to Middlesex. I have two children that go to Ware Academy over in Gloucester. Ware Academy on the 24th went to mask optional. The two children that I have there, I have a first grader and I have a seventh grader. So we're at two different ends of the spectrum. My seventh grader is a very sensitive child. She has high levels of anxiety. She's been attending Ware, that's why she goes to Ware, because it's a smaller classroom setting. But she started there in pre-K3. And for 2 years, this child never even looked her teacher in the eye or said hi or her name, would not respond completely. She has selective autism. So she was not responsive at all. We have spent years pulling her out of that shell and working with therapists and working on her belly breathing and anything that will help her with her mutism. And we had gotten to a point right before COVID where she was right in line with other children. COVID then set us back. Now, Ware has gone mask optional. My child, I'm not gonna use her name, but my child wears her mask in the classroom. She does not wear it in the hallway when she's comfortable with some of her friends. And I asked her why, because I believe it's her decision. This is a parent's decision, but that goes on to the child. Why do you wear your mask in the classroom, but not in the hall? She doesn't want the teachers to see her face. She blends in with her mask. And in situations where she's not comfortable, she doesn't feel like she's up to par with the rest of the class, she wants to hide behind this mask so that nobody can see her and she can go back into the shadows. And that can't happen with our children. My first grader, beautiful little Luca, 2 weeks ago after Ware went mask optional, I picked him up from Carline, and this cute little girl was on the steps and she waved at him as we were starting to pull off. And I said, Luca, what's her name again? And this little girl's been in his class. Now, if you guys don't know, Ware Academy has one class per grade. So there's one pre-K, one first grade, one second grade in the entire class in the entire grade. So this little girl has been with him for 3 years. And he said, I don't know, Mommy, she's new. She just started this week. And I said, no, she's been in school with you. This is your 3rd year. And he said, no, Mommy, I just saw her this week. So Luca had been in school with her for 3 years, but had not seen her face for 2. That's scary. And that can't happen with our children. So I just wanted to bring some of those points up. But there's been no bullying, no other issues, and not once has any of their classrooms been shut down for COVID. And previously, when they had a positive case in the classroom, they shut down the grade and that grade then attended virtually. They have not had to do that since we've gone mask optional, but they have several times since then.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. Appreciate it.
is Cody Kohel and I'm from Hartfield, and I also want to bring up the mask mandate. I guess as a parent, I'm very frustrated at this point that we've had to have our children do something that I personally have not been for the last couple of years, but we have abided by it. And now that we have a governor that is giving the choice back to the parents, it's very frustrating to every day send my child doing something that I'm not in agreement with. But I have to make that decision because she needs an education. She wants to be with her friends. And yet I'm sending her every day wearing a mask, knowing that this should be my choice and it's not been given to me as a parent. So I just wanted to speak out and just say, you know, we've done our part in abiding for the last 2 years. And now that we actually have a choice that's being given back to us, and now we're being told it's not your choice at this point, it's just very frustrating as a parent. And I know what it's done to the kids. I've watched it. I'm a parent. I see it. And I would just really ask if you guys would consider, because as you can see tonight, there is a huge support in removing these. I mean, when is it going to be time? If it's not now, when is it? So I just want to thank you and just let you know that, you know, as a parent, this is very frustrating having your hands tied when it comes to your own child. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, the floor is closed for public comment at this time. All right, board members. Do you have reports? Dr. Burnett?
I have a report. I attended the governor's school board meeting in January. At that time, we received the proposed budget for the 22-23 school year. I have shared that with Dr. Seitz. On Thursday, we will vote on that budget, and I can report that outcome at the next meeting.
Okay, great. Mr. Hare?
Yes, Dr. Seitz and I visited the Bridging Communities. There was a board meeting there. At this point, it's a little early on for this session of Bridging Communities. However, I believe our next meeting's in March, and there we'll see a lot of budget talks and new things that may be coming in Bridging Communities. So I'm very excited to tell you that there is new thing coming in Bridging Communities. I can't promise you at this point when, but I can promise you they're coming. So we're looking forward to new things and new options for our students in the Bridging Communities system.
All right, thank you. Jenny, anything yet?
I don't have anything committee-wise for WHRO, but I will share that I enjoyed, what was it? A couple of Mondays ago, being in the elementary school for the morning, and this Wednesday, I got to hang out with St. Clair Walker students and teachers. And then I ventured to the high school, and I was extremely impressed with what was going on in both schools.
Thank you. The regional special ed program met this past Wednesday virtually. And the proposed budget was there, but it was just as a proposal that, of course, is determined based on the number of students we have, and of course gets divided out, and we pay proportionally based on the number of our students. We will have a final budget in April, and Ms. Murray already has the numbers, so she's plugging those in, and she'll have a final idea in April as to exact number for that. The program's going very well, and the students have made out very well during this very difficult time. All right, anything else from anyone? Okay, I believe the facilities committee took a walk around, did you?
We did indeed. Mr. Reed and I had a nice visit. We walked around the school. We visited the bus garage, and I'm proud to say there's at least 180% improvement in the bus garage. It looks really nice. Not to say that it wasn't functional as it was. However, it's now organized. We visited the high school and looked at some things that have some possibilities for us to work towards as time goes on. And let's see, we did go to the maintenance shop and met our new guy there.
Okay.
Wonderful guy. He's doing a wonderful job with the grounds. And so we got nice things to look forward to in our groundskeepers for the following year. This guy is well taught, well knowledgeable in groundkeeping. Comes from golf course, so you know he's got to be pretty well knowing what he's doing. So we're looking forward to what he brings us in time with the football field and baseball and softball fields.
Great. All right, thank you. One other point, I believe you have in front of you the spring forum for the Eastern region. And that is March 9th. It is virtual. And I thought if we would like to meet in the, what do we call that, for a meeting room? At the Cook's Corner Office Complex meeting room at 6 o'clock. We could all see that meeting. There's a program listed there, and so it'll all be Zoom still this year, not getting together. So if you would be able to do that, let Peggy know, and we could meet together and maybe have a sandwich or a salad or something and enjoy the company of the other people in our region. All right. I don't have anything else. Do you all? Everybody good? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Any questions about it? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We have some action items here. Budget transfer requests. Dr. Seitz.
All right, and that is on page 32 in your packet, and that is just moving. We had additional monies and salaries and wages specifically for some positions we had not filled, and we had a need in the, mainly on the maintenance side of things. And so that's moving those monies over. Some of the things on the maintenance side is the custodial contract additions for the remainder of the year, and then security grant, which you'll see actually in the appropriation. We did have a local match to that. And so that's the budget transfer request.
Is there a motion to approve the budget transfer request? Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
All right.
Any opposed? All right. Appropriations request.
Okay, appropriations, and that's on page 34 in your packet, and you'll see on the top 3 lines, there were 3 grants we've received. The first one is a cafeteria reimbursement, and that's for some additional expenses that were encumbered during the pandemic. Those have been recovered back. The school security grant, which I mentioned, that $216,000 every year that opens, we apply for the maximum amount we can apply for, and we did receive that. So that'll go towards some upgrades in all of our schools. And then the last one, which is a dual enrollment alignment grant, just allows us to work with RCC and ensure that our DE courses are aligned with the Virginia Community College system in order to transfer for our students.
Is there a motion to approve the appropriations request?
So moved.
There's a second.
Second.
Any questions? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed? All right, the proposed school calendar.
Proposed school calendar for 22-23, and that's on page 38 in your packet. You'll notice, I'm sure you've reviewed it, that it's very similar to the calendar that we have for this school year. It is 177 instructional days, which is what our current calendar is. This will be the 3rd year going into a pre-Labor Day start, same time that we started this year. We did continue to keep the 3 days off for Thanksgiving that we started last year, and 2 weeks for that time during the Christmas and New Year break. We kept spring break the first week of April. There were some questions about moving that earlier since our start is earlier, but the first week of April keeps it consistent with our regional partners. And so for Governor School and Bridging Communities, we all try to stay in line with those things. We had 4 professional days built in, which is what we have built in for this year, but we did changed one of them most recently to back to a parent-teacher, in-person parent-teacher conference day for October 19th, and we would do an adjusted schedule on that day. Have staff in from 10 to 6 for parents to come in. We got some feedback from parents that they really wanted to see that built back into our schedules also. And then we had added, if you remember, I think back in November, we added some early release days for second semester of this calendar year. We went ahead and built those in to the calendar for next year during the second semester. So there's student early release day times to allow for teachers to have some of that time in their classrooms. So that's overall what the 22-23 calendar that we're proposing looks like and includes.
Is there a motion to approve the 2022-23 school calendar as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions for Dr. Seitz on this calendar? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. All right, Dr. Seitz, let's look at the budget.
And I'm actually going to move down to the podium for that so that I can use the larger screen to look up at. So we can, Steve, actually move to the next slide whenever you are prepared to do that. And so I'll just remind you a little bit of what our core values are that we established back in 2018 with the administrative team that we had at that time and did some work with Interwill to really lay out our four core central or four core values that are central to everything that we do in our teaching and learning experience. And so when we think about learning, when we're applying knowledge and pursuing passions and just cultivating that love of learning and believing in oneself. When we think about creativity, we're thinking critically and being curious and taking risks and trying new things. When we're collaborating, we're earning and giving trust, communicating and accepting differences and different perspectives and navigating conflict and respect. And then lastly, citizenship, when we're understanding and treating others with respect, taking responsibility for our own actions and acting with others' best interest in mind. And so again, like I said, everything that we do goes back to those values that we've established. So when we look at the variables that affect our budget, and I went over these a little bit back in December when we first started talking about priorities. And so currently our student enrollment for FY22 is based on an ADM of 1080. We are fortunate in that we're not like some of the other divisions around the state and that we haven't suffered an enrollment loss that we continue to see like some divisions have. Our enrollment is actually up a little bit this year. And so going into FY23, we are projecting an ADM of 1100. And so I'll just, maybe as a reminder, or maybe it's new information, is that that enrollment number is what we're funded for. It's not actually our total enrollment because we're not funded for our pre-K students and we're not funded for any of our students that are in alternative day settings. And so that's about 100 more students that we don't receive money for necessarily, but that we are responsible for in our expenditure side of things. Insurance premiums, we know that they are increasing for this year. We should have that final number hopefully by the end of this week. So we've got a holding place that as we go through here that we've built in to the budget for FY23. The Virginia retirement system, if you remember back in, or VRS back in December, I did tell you that they had proposed a 2% reduction in the professional rate. However, when the governor's budget came out, they kept that remaining, or the governor kept that remaining constant. And so we were hoping to see some savings there, which would offset the insurance premiums increase, but that is remaining constant. So we don't receive a savings there. I guess the good news is it didn't increase. The composite index, or our local ability to pay, I know that I shared the last time we were together that every 2 years it goes through a benchmarking process and that is increasing for us. And so that goes from 0.6008 to 0.6324. And that's what our basic aid is based on. And so what the state does is the students that we're projected on, that goes into the local composite index factors into that, and that's what our basic aid is. So looking at next year, even though our enrollment will be up, we are still going to receive less funding on the basic aid side because of the local composite index increase. But the state recognized that there are some divisions that are still struggling and could be, because of their enrollment loss, will be affected by the increase in the LCI. And so they have built in a re-benchmarking hold harmless incentive, which actually supports back into divisions money that they may have lost through the re-benchmarking process. So we will see some gains in that area. Sales tax actually is up. Although there is a piece in the governor's budget that removes the grocery tax, which is a benefit to the consumer, but that's also money that comes back to school divisions. And so with sales tax being up, that brings it down a little bit, but they built in a grocery tax incentive, and that's to help actually really put back into the sales tax what is being taken out with the elimination of the tax on the consumer side. So that does come back in there. The at-risk is an add-on support piece to the basic aid. And that really is a formula that the state uses where it calculates economically disadvantaged students, considered to be educationally at risk. And it costs more when you have a student that's educationally at risk. And so they build that back into the basic aid through lottery supported funds. And so Middlesex continues to, since they first brought that program into play, or those funds into play, Middlesex has received them and will receive even more next year through this current budget. So overall, lottery funds are also, because that's a lottery funded program, overall lottery funds will be up for 2023, and federal funding is also up. I should have said at the beginning of this, before we go to the next slide, is that all of this projected up and down that I'm giving you is based on the former governor's budget with the current governor's amendments. What we still haven't seen yet are the House version and the Senate version, and then of course what we'll end up with in the next couple of months. And so back in December, I shared with you some priorities that we established. First of which is to support and develop staff. And through that, and how that affects our budget is, of course, addressing the cost of our health insurance. And so that's not all put back on our employees when that increases, if it does. Maintaining a competitive salary structure. And so I'll share some information with you in future slides of what that looks like to be competitive with our neighbors. You're certainly all aware of the additional stress and responsibilities and work that's been placed on our staff this year, so we keep that in mind. And then lastly, professional learning and support. And so we're addressing our staffing and programming, professional development, and those types of things. We also looked at our equitable programming. And so we're really looking at what we're currently offering and what we are evaluating as future offerings. And so that's anything from our CTE programs and making sure our kids are not just career ready, but they're exposed to careers that they may not have even heard of. Balanced assessments, and so that our students aren't just taking multiple choice tests, because we recognize that's actually not a skill that prepares them for the next level. Summer program, we continue to support and expand. Literacy and numeracy support. We work closely with our mathematics and literacy specialists, as those are foundational skills. And so we're paying attention to how to continue to build that support into our classrooms, as well as with our students with disabilities, and then continuing to increase our dual enrollment opportunities. And then lastly, what we look at is our overall operational efficiency and safety and our learning environments and our facilities. And so we want to continue to pay attention to what our capital improvement programs are, because it's not a wish list. And we certainly want to make sure that they're actionable items as we move forward. And I'll go through those as we as we move through our slides. And then another piece of that is supporting our custodial contract partnership, which we know is going to be another impact to our budget for next year. So when we look at our overall budget considerations, as I mentioned, insurance is increasing, and we expect that to be about a 10% increase. Hopefully not more. As I said, we'll have that final number by the end of this week, but that is the number that we built into the budget that the end numbers that you'll have this evening is a 10% increase. Again, we do not want to pass that on to our employees, because when you talk about a raise and then an increase of insurance premiums that high, then everyone's taking home less money. Compensation, a couple of things that factor into that. We will see another minimum wage adjustment in January of 23. We've gone through 2 of those in the past budget cycle, and that does increase. And so when we have an increase to our hourly salary scales, it doesn't just affect those starting pieces. You have to certainly understand that when the minimum wage increase is there, that's going to be an effect into both some of the higher scales. And so there's some adjustments that go on there just to the scale side of things to meet what those requirements are. And then of course, a salary scale increase, which I'll discuss further. This budget does include the addition of 2 positions, human resources specialists, which actually we've already hired with ESSER funds and need to build in. The addition of a maintenance worker on the operations team, and then moving our athletic trainer. This is moving from part-time to full-time. Currently what it is right now is a contracted service that we consider part-time, but we want to move it into a full-time position that is one of our employees. And then of course, I already mentioned the custodial services contract being a budget implication for next year also. And so this gives you where we are currently in teacher salary scales for 21-22. So these are not all of the divisions in Region 3, but these are the ones who are closest to us and most similar in size to us. And so the good news is, when you look over on the right and you see what the average and the median and then where we rank is, the good news is we're not the lowest in the group, but we're not the highest in the group either. And so you'll see that the first 3 steps on the scale, we rank 6 out of 9 with our regional school divisions here. We come up a little bit, at step 3, but then we start to drop a little bit as we get lower, and we're ranking 5th out of 9. When we move to the next level of steps, on steps 11 through 20, you can see that we stay at ranked 5th for the first couple, but then we drop to ranking 6 out of 9, and those are on steps 11 through 20. And then when we move to our last group, which takes us to our highest scale, because for us, the highest step scale is 30. So steps 21 through 30, you'll see that even though we had a couple of steps we were ranking on step 5, for the most part, we're at step 6. I say step 6, ranked 6 out of 9 with our regional competitors. So now I'll call them competitors here. These are all my colleagues. They're great school divisions. They're wonderful to work with, but when it comes to hiring, we're all in competition with each other. We're all looking for the best people to bring to our own teams. And so I think the takeaways from here are that the governor's budget, the current governor, for the former governor, proposed a 10% salary scale raise for teachers, which would over the biennium. So you look at 5% for this year and 5% for the next year. All of our neighbors in our region are looking at a 5% increase. And so if we keep at that 5%, that keeps us ranked 6 out of 9 with our neighbors. And again, I'll refer to them as competitors here. And so the slide that you're looking at now goes back to fiscal year 19 to where we currently are. So for 19, if you remember, that was the year of the Springstead study, which at the time recommended a 16.83% increase in scales, with the recommendation we do it all in 1 year, which was astronomical, or try to phase that in over a 3-year period. So I just bring that up as a reminder. I know that some people don't necessarily want to hear about the Springstead study anymore. But that year we were able to give a 7% increase plus a step. A step for us is 1.3%. And so after that, we had to back off some with the 1% increase in the step. And then the FY '21, there actually was, I don't remember what the proposed increase was. It was a proposed increase in salaries. But then remember March 13, 2020, the day that we'll never forget, when everything in education stopped, and so did the budget. And so everything was cut out at that time. So fortunately, staff got a step increase, but no raise there. Last year, we were able to bring some of that back. And so the proposal for FY '23 that's in the budget that you'll get some of those numbers for tonight is an overall 7% increase. That's 5.7% raise plus a 1.3% step increase with a total increase of 7%.
May I ask you a question there?
Yes, ma'am.
The 5.7 over the biennium, does that become 4.3 for next year?
So the 1.3 factors into that also.
It does.
And it would be a 7% raise for this year. And so the next year, we would be required to give a minimum 3%.
So the step is considered a raise and not just a normal move.
Correct. And I'm looking at Karen to make sure.
Yeah.
Yes, because it's a salary increase, yes.
I guess.
And so this budget includes, I'd mentioned, 2 additional positions. Human resources specialist, which for us handles endorsement, recertification, all onboarding, backgrounds checks, benefits, verifications, posting, recruiting, hiring, a list of number of things that had been covered by about 5 different people in that office. And so that you can imagine wasn't the most efficient process that was going on. Plus, it was taking away from those who were responsible for other things that were under their job title. It was additional pieces there which we knew we were missing. And so we have hired that position with ESSER funds, but it does need to come into our budget as a full-time position. Maintenance worker, when you look at that department right now, that consists of the director of operations. The director of operations oversees maintenance and transportation. The director of operations is also considered the maintenance supervisor and the maintenance worker. Sometimes he's even a substitute bus driver. But along with him, it is just 2 other technicians that work in that department. And that's to cover all 3 schools plus our athletic complex facilities. And there are certain times during the year where that athletic complex, the growing season from March to September, that's almost a full-time job just to be responsible for that, which we lack. So some of that's not obviously while school is open, but we do lack someone at each of the schools and designated at each of the schools that can be there for all of the opening operations in the morning to catch anything that may go on before anyone enters the building. Plus, adding another person allows us to be more proactive in our preventative maintenance. And so with that, we've got someone dedicated to all 3 schools for a lot of those regular routines that need to be done. And then we've got some that are specialized in certain areas. As Mr. Harrow said, one of our maintenance people is very skilled in the landscaping type thing. We have someone who's skilled in plumbing, so that it can be more easily divided in who covers what if there's something that needs to be repaired. And so we have built that into this budget. Athletic trainer, as I mentioned, we contracted for that, I think 2 years ago, with a company, a local company, and for about 25 to 30 hours of services. He was able to come in about 1 or 1:30 in the afternoon, work with some athletes who may be going through some injury recovery and such, have them ready for practices, attend all of the practices and games. The company that we have contracted with has done some restructuring, and we don't have those 25 to 30 hours anymore. So the athletic trainer is able to get to us about 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the early evening. And so practices are pretty much over, almost over at that point, and we really are only getting services now for our home games. And so moving this position to a full-time position, we are hopeful that it's a more attractive package and that we could hire someone as our own full-time employee to have when we need someone there, pre-practice, all of our practices, home games, potentially to travel to away games if we need those services. And so that's built in here. And then the custodial contracted services, we are, and I'll talk about this a little bit later on this evening on how we are moving to post this for a new custodial contract, which we need. Whether we were doing that or not doing that, there's been such an increase in spending and needs on the side of any custodial contract due to what we've experienced during the pandemic. And we've been able to support that through ESSER funds. But as you know, the ESSER funds will come to an end. Those needs will not come to an end for additional cleaning and services and things like that. So that's a piece that's built into this budget. And so when we go through all of the process for budgeting, I think it's important to point out that we don't just look at it as what can we spend, give us your wish list, and we're going to spend all of the money, because we try to be very good stewards of the money that we are asking for wherever it comes from. And so our principals and our directors do an excellent job of going through their own budgets, determining what their own needs are. They do some internal movement themselves, evaluations, and then they send those up to the central office level. And then we sit and we go through each one of those requests. And so they present a budget to us, a line item budget, and then they also present us some requests that they are asking to be added. And so then on our end, when I say our, Dr. Bishop and Ms. Murray and I sit and go through those almost line by line and determine what the needs are. Is there any reassignment of positions or services that we can do throughout that budget to make it balance a little bit better, and we do that. We also go through and evaluate the programs. Dr. Bishop's been working with a team there to just evaluate all of our, whether it's a software program or it's a purchase service, to know what the effectiveness is. It's just because it's something that we've had in place for a long time. Who's using it? How much are we using it? And what's the benefit is the main thing. And so I think it's important just to note that budget doesn't just consist of what those numbers are for asks, but how we go through to determine what our needs are going forward. So the capital improvement project, which is going to be separate from the numbers that you're going to see here. Someone asked me earlier, and it was a great question when I presented at the schools, is asked specifically about how that's funded. And I'll just say it's in a separate bucket a little bit, but it is something that we certainly go to our county for support. And so the school bus replacement, we've already added into our FY23 budget, because we were able to take advantage of some grant funding for 2 new electric school buses instead of just having our buses on a 1 bus a year replacement. And so the $704,000 is the total cost of the project. However, we were able to receive $530,000 in a grant from DEQ for the Volkswagen Mitigation Trust that went on there. And so the total cost to us actually is going to be $174,280, which is about $87,000 per bus, which is actually cheaper than purchasing a diesel bus. And so not only do we get to take advantage of the program for electric buses, but it costs us less than buying a diesel bus, and these are much larger. I'll skip down to the LED lighting upgrades. This actually is a 2-year, $500,000 project, but we've added it in as doing 1 school for FY. And so this says FY22 because that's how the county budget works. It's really FY23 for us. So $250 for this year, and then $250 for the following year. And so that just, all of those upgrades need to be taken place within, so everything is switched out. And so it's, there's research on better academic performance, and then certainly there's a cost saving and energy saving to us and the schools. And that was an evaluation that was done a couple of years ago when we had our previous director of operations there. So the 2 yellow numbers that you see there, they're in our current CIP that we submitted to the county this year. And so the paving, sealing, painting of parking lots is for all the schools. The overflow parking lot is at MES. We don't really have an overflow parking lot at MES, but we have a field that's being used as an overflow parking lot at MES. We believe that both of those projects we can get funded through the ESSER 3 grant, which is the federal funding that's related to pandemic relief. Because we've had to change a lot of how we even direct traffic within our parking lots and what's needed as we've had more students, less students riding school buses and more students being picked up and dropped off by their parents. So we're pretty sure that we can amend our grant application and have those added, which would be a $565,000 savings that we pull back out of the CIP, the savings for the county. I've kept the MHS building renovation there, and I'll have an update on that at the beginning of the meeting, but I kept that specifically because we want to keep that in our immediate future on making some decisions when we get some recommendations from the architectural companies. A question mark certainly for the dollar amount, because we really don't have any idea what that will look like until we see what the options are. And a couple of things I just kept listed at the bottom. And those were some grant opportunities we're able to take advantage of, where we had the chiller replaced here at St. Paul Walker just a couple of months ago. That was in the CIP project for the county at $250,000. We were able to use grant funds for that, and so we were able to pull that out. And then the HVAC replacement that just took place at the elementary school, even though that was a large project, there were some another opportunity that came out for air quality that we could take advantage of, and that was that 200, I think it's 216 that's in there, was the largest amount that Middlesex could apply for, and we did and got that. We'll be cutting a check this week, I think, back to the county for what they paid to support that HVAC upgrades at the elementary school. And so here's the revenue summary. So again, I will remind you that this is based on the former governor's budget with the current governor's amendments. Again, we don't know what the House and Senate looks like yet. And then at some point, I guess in April, Karen, we will have a final budget and exact numbers to work off of. And so you'll see that some of the information I shared at the beginning, state funds are up, federal funds are up, other funds, it looks like we were cut a lot of money, but we actually weren't. That's related to, and then this one I really do have to refer back to my notes because I've gone through this 100 times in my head on the E-rate funds and the category 2 E-rate funds. And so there's over a 5-year period, there's a certain amount of funds that we can apply for reimbursement for. And so we spend that, apply for the reimbursement, and that's what the other funds are that come in. And so we are about at the end of that spending piece of it. And so therefore, if there's not the spending, you're not going to see the reimbursement. So it's not that we've lost so many of those funds. We're at the end of that, coming near the end of that period. And then it's kind of recalculated, reevaluated after 5 years, and there's an opportunity for more funds to come back to us. So it's not really a loss, even though that's what that may look like. So when you look at the overall operation budget, this would be considered the local piece of the local funding piece. Remember, if you're thinking about that, the LCI, and that we're at moving up to 0.6324, that means that percentage of the budget that the state says Middlesex County has the ability to pay and fund. And so when you look at the operation piece, you'll see that there's an increase of about 7.7%. Debt service is down a little bit. We did do some refinancing last year that helped with that. And so you'll see that the total local funds request there, or what this budget is based on, is an additional 784,615 with a 6.8% increase. When you factor in the other state, federal, and then the other funds there, this budget comes to an increase of just over 6%. So question, I'm going to direct all the questions to Karen. So again, this is what looks like the numbers are right now. They will change as we go into, I keep mentioning the other, the House and the Senate budget, and then what the final is, they'll change. I don't know, and I don't think we have any indication on what that will look like, whether state funds will look better or look worse. We don't know.
It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, the percent, because of the increase in salaries, which we know how that plays out. We get SOQ funding, but what's the percentage on that?
Right, so SOQ funding, I'm glad you brought that up. And so when the budget comes out and there's give a 10% raise, whether it's over the buy-in or not, that the money that comes from the state is for SOQ funded positions, which for Middlesex is 56% of our positions. So the rest of the positions that we have, the state does not give any state funding towards that. And so the majority of that does become a local ask. And so even for the 56% that the state funds, that runs through the LCI. And so then of those 56%, we're still responsible for 63% of what that costs. So the interesting piece is, I'll say interesting, frustrating and interesting piece is that we have considerably a high LCI, but then we also, when I mentioned the at-risk add-on, when it factors in economically disadvantaged students and how we qualify for that because of the number of students that are considered economically at risk, it doesn't match up. It doesn't match up what the state considers our ability to pay, and then the students that we serve are really not in line. And that's why we qualify for that at-risk add-on, is because of the number of students that we have that are considered educationally at risk.
And the free and reduced rate.
Right, and which is the free and reduced rate.
Well,
How often is the LCI recalculated?
Every 2 years. Every 2 years.
Is there an appeal process?
no.
Unfortunately not. I will say, we always want people to speak up and share their voice for what they want and need. I will say that everything that I have learned is that there's not much voice that we have in that, it's frustrating. It's frustrating because I don't feel like it represents our student body.
And it is an odd formula that they use to get to this number. And it gets discussed every meeting I go to. There's someone talking about it. And generally speaking, the members of the General Assembly that are there look at you and go, we're not changing it. I think it would be too much of a hassle for them to change it. But I mean, we're in better shape now than we were 10 years ago, but 10 years ago, we were one of the highest in the state. Not that that helps us right
It's
now.
been in the 70s here, yeah, and 0.8 is the highest.
We were at 0.74 at one. So it is better than it was then, but still, it's hard to take a jump of 0.3 basically is what we went up. Because that knocks back our funding.
And aren't there some school divisions in Northern Virginia that are actually lower than we are?
Yes.
Did I read that someplace?
Ms. Murray? Yes.
Yeah, which doesn't add to my understanding of how that process works. All right, that's enough.
And they've got the bigger voice.
Just back-
Yes, they have a bigger voice. Exactly. All right, anybody else have any questions? It's a lot to absorb.
Nope, not at this point.
All right, thank you, Dr. Sykes.
Thank you.
All right, next on the information list is we determined at the January 24th meeting that we would revisit the masking issue. And since our last meeting, there have been, as I'm sure you're familiar with, 2 cases that ruled on the executive order number 2. I'll give you just a very brief scale down summary of each. In the case of Chesapeake 13 parents filed for their children out of Chesapeake school system. They filed in the Supreme Court of Virginia to stop EO2. The case was dismissed based on procedural errors. The case was filed at the Supreme Court level, and the court does not have jurisdiction to decide on the request of the complainants. So there was no judgment made on that in the legality of the Executive Order 2. The case filed by 7 school boards in the Arlington Circuit Court asked for an injunction for the Executive Order 2. The judge granted the injunction by upholding Senate Bill 1303 that states each school board should determine whether any update to protocols are appropriate. There was no ruling on the validity of mask wearing at that time either. Each of these rulings contains much more legalese than I have related here, but for our purposes this evening, these are the relevant positions. Also, you may remember at our last called meeting, there was a 14-page document that dropped in Dr. Seitz' mailbox at 4:35 that afternoon, and of which we had no time to discuss. So I've asked her at this time to give us a review of the pertinent information that came down from the Virginia Department of Health under the new administration.
All right, thank you. And so fortunately, I've had some time to review that and review some communication from the Virginia Department of Ed, and I'll go through that also. And so within that document, of course, they stated the first 3 core principles, which actually were found in the executive order, is that 1, parents are in charge of their children's health, well-being, and education. Schools must be open 5 days a week for in-person learning, and the Commonwealth and school divisions must provide a safe and healthy school environment. And of course, they add that with freedom comes responsibility. And then they find out actually some prevention strategies where they've listed responsibilities of parent, responsibilities of school officials and staff, and then responsibilities of public health. And so the guidance shares that implementing prevention strategies to reduce risk associated with COVID-19 is a shared responsibility between parents and families, school officials and staff, and local public health authorities. And for parents, what the document shares is that keeping children home when sick and seeking care and testing as appropriate, decisions on vaccination, and decisions on masks. For school officials and staff, to provide adequate and appropriate ventilation, physical distancing, encouraging students, teachers, and staff to stay home from work when sick and to seek care and testing as appropriate, and make decisions, and that the school's responsibility is to make decisions about excluding children or staff from school or work due to illness. Also educating staff regarding their choices pertaining to masking, offering COVID-19 testing programs, such as screening testing, diagnostic testing, and test to stay programs, ensure hand washing and respiratory etiquette, maintaining clean and healthy facilities, notifying students and staff of known cases and or exposures in combination with isolation and quarantine, and notifying public health of outbreaks in a timely manner. And then for public health, it was mainly providing data and information to help inform parents and families with their decisions, responding to outbreaks in schools, and providing technical assistance on outbreak investigation. And so what I would personally share from the guidance that is expected of school officials and staff, we are actually meeting those requirements. We have started the screening testing and diagnostic testing and test to stay. We have a great working relationship with the Three Rivers Health Department when it comes to any of those investigations. And so since that, we also were waiting for some communication from the Virginia Department of Health, which we did. There was a meeting that was held, and then they just followed up with answering some of the questions from superintendents in an email document on February 3rd. And within that, they shared, while parents and families can choose for their child not to wear a mask at school, VDH recommends all persons age 2 and older, regardless of vaccination status, wear masks indoors and in public settings when community level of transmission is high. There's some other guidelines in there specifically related to wearing a mask when students have been and staff have been identified as needing to quarantine when they're returning to school on days 6 through 10 following a 5-day isolation period. And then also the recommendation for schools to follow any of the DOLE standards when it comes to employers and employees. Specifically, the question has been asked about school buses, and I will make sure that everyone understands that that's not a state order, that's a federal order. When it comes to school buses, that's a master required when using public transportation, and that does include school buses and any transportation of students, even if that's within a car or a setting like that. And so that's certainly not a part of any of the executive orders or Senate bills that are currently out there. Specifically, when students have been identified to quarantine or isolate, schools can, within the guidance from the Department of Education, which is in line with the Virginia Department of Health, if parents can choose for their students to return to school wearing a mask or complete the entire isolation or quarantine period at home if their child's unable to wear a mask at school. So those are the updates. The overall, just a synopsis of what was in the document we received as the updated guidance from VDH, and then additional questions that were answered from the Department of Education.
Okay, thank you. In light of that information and in light of the current bill passing through the Senate and the House of Representatives, Mr. Harrod, do you have a motion to put on the floor?
I do. I move that the Middlesex County Public Schools adopt a student mask optional in-school protocol. This information and this protocol following the recent Virginia Department of Health recommendations. This to begin on February the 18th of this year, 2022,
Which would be Friday.
would be Friday.
Is there a second to that recommendation, that motion?
Second.
Is there a second? Is there any discussion? So based on this motion, Friday would be the day to start optional mask wearing for students in our schools, not on our buses, not on our transportation, because that is federal, just so everyone understands. And we would be following all the protocols set down by VDH on returning after sickness or whatever those, all those different protocols that they have established. Anyone else?
I have a question.
Yes.
What about the teachers? I know that the Department of Labor, Virginia Department of Labor is supposed to meet tomorrow. That's what I was just.
At this time, we only have jurisdiction over our students. And that's why this motion refers to the students only, as far as mask wearing
Right.
at this time.
I could answer where we are with that,
Okay.
if you want me to answer that.
Yes.
Yeah. So under the Department of Labor and Industry, in the Code of Virginia, it states that employers shall provide and require employees that are not fully vaccinated employees in areas of substantial or high community transmission and otherwise at-risk employees to wear face coverings or surgical masks while indoors. So that's where it stands right now.
Okay.
Because we are considered high transmission, right?
Correct.
We are,
Yeah.
okay. But if they meet tomorrow and it gets, they can unmask immediately?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so to be more clear, so that maybe everyone understands that, is what Ms. Sochuk was sharing, is that the board can certainly make a decision to make it optional for students because we are employers and have to follow what you're mentioning there, the DOLE. So the Department of Labor and Industry enforces what's in the Virginia Code there when it comes to employers and employees. And right now, the way that stands is that we are required to have our employees wear, unvaccinated employees wear masks all the time, and vaccinated employees wear them when the community transmission level is substantial or high, which right now the whole state's high.
Hopefully we'll find out something tomorrow.
Mhm. That's your hope.
All right, but in this particular bill, I mean, pardon me, motion, it just refers to students because
Correct,
we don't have the
students.
authority at this time to address anything else.
They consider. us
Everybody
an
understand?
employer.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
all right. Motion's been seconded. No other questions? All those in favor indicate, excuse me. Mr. Reed is not here. And he did, Mr. Reed is not well, so that's the reason he is not here. He did ask me to make a couple of comments on his behalf. One of the things that he is concerned about is the fact that with greater freedom comes greater responsibility. And he wanted me to emphasize when our children are sick, they need to stay home. Because although we've heard many people say many things tonight, it is true that transmission of, regardless of what it is, occurs when our children are sick. And right now, under the circumstances of COVID, we would hope that parents would exercise very judicious decision-making to keep students home. And we all hope that we understand that each classroom is a community, it's a family. Each school is a community. Our entire school system is a community, and we look after one another. And that is what we intend to continue to do as the school year progresses. And we want everyone in the community to work together. I think that was about it for Mr. Reed. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I think that is a unanimous decision. Ms. McMurtry, I keep wanting to call you Ellen, but it's so bad. Is that an aye for you? Ms. McMurtry? Ms. Hara?
Yes.
Dr. Burnett?
By all means.
Mrs. Socek, yes. So it is a unanimous vote, Mrs. Jordan. All right. Any opposed? I am supposed to say that, although it's unanimous. All right, custodial services contract.
All right, custodial services contract, which I've mentioned a couple of times when I was presenting budget to you. And so we last put that out for an RFP in 2019 and entered into a contract agreement with Laser Clean, which went very, very well. That contract had it was renewable annually for 4 years, and that renewal took place on June 30th of each year. Since we returned back full-time after the pandemic has started, the company has just, they've struggled to hire and retain qualified employees in order to keep up to the standards that we have in our schools and the needs that we have in our schools. And so Mr. Harris and I have been meeting with Mr. Hill and Mr. Manuel for probably a couple of months and trying to help them navigate back to where what their standards were when they first started with us. They've been great to work with and trying to get some things into place, but they just have struggled to do that. And so at our last meeting, which was at the end of January, we came to an agreement, both Laser Clean and Middlesex County Public Schools mutually agreed upon to terminate the contract for convenience. We could have waited until June 30, but we were again in agreement that we needed to move forward sooner than then and hopefully be able to get a company to come in and take care of the things that we need. And so we have posted an RFP. We held a mandatory pre-proposal meeting this morning, and we had 4 companies come in to both hear about what our needs are and tour our schools. And there is so their proposals, if they wish to bid on them, are due March 1st. And our plan is to have to you at the March meeting a recommendation for a company who will take over and be in place April 1st. And so it's about a 60-day turnaround time. Typically, you don't do that during the school year. But as I said, this was a mutual agreement between us and Laser Clean that it was in everyone's best interest to go ahead and make that move now. Happy to answer any questions about that too.
All right, and Dr. Bishop.
Yeah, just an annual report on the pupil teacher ratios for the school division. I broke that down by grade level. It's in your binder, by grade level and by school and by content area. They all fall within the standard of quality. So we're looking good there. We are lacking some positions that were unfilled, but we're still doing well with administrators who are very adept at using every resource they can to make sure that our students are getting what they need. And so at the very end, it's middle school, our elementary school is 19-1, St. Clair Walker is 17-1, and the high school is 13-1. So that is annual report for our student teacher ratios.
We've got history and science class. I've got a few extra in them. Those poor teachers. Right. The floor is now open for public comment.
So I'm Brittany, I'm from Saluda. I have 4 children in elementary school.
What is your last name?
Anton, A-N-T-O-N.
Thank you.
One of the things that I wanted to point out, and that you said that you're meeting tomorrow about like the teachers.
There's a state Department of,
I'm sorry, Virginia Department of Labor.
yeah, Department of Labor meeting that will discuss the current policy regulations, teachers masking.
So I guess like, and I didn't come prepared to speak about it because I was thinking about it while I was sitting up there. But vaccinated or not, vaccinated people can spread COVID just as well as unvaccinated people. And having 4 young children, I think it's important to see like when I say young, I have 2 4-year-olds, a 5-year-old, a 8-year-old. The way that, and it's minor, they're young, but the way that things like are mispronounced or like they need to see, as Ms. Larson mentioned, how things are pronounced, how you move your mouth. And I think that, vaccinated or not, and I know it's not a decision that y'all are making, I know it's statewide. But that's important. I mean, vaccinated or not, but they need to see the teachers now. Because they're young. The other thing was on page, I'm trying to pull it up, sorry. I think it was page 14, sorry, 11 of, sorry. On page 11 of the Virginia Department of Health for the masks, the paramedic had mentioned the N95 and the K95. It says on point 9 that unless it's an N95 or K95, it's not effective. So unless the teachers are wearing those, it specifically says masks made of plain cloth, masks that are soiled or poorly fitting, and masks that are not worn properly provide reduced or no benefit. So, I think for the benefit of our children, it'd be beneficial if the teachers, if the kids could see their mouth, to see how, we're just supposed to be spoken, how you move your mouth, where your tongue, little things that you don't think are a big deal until you can't see. So, I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anton. Anyone else? The floor is closed for public comment. Dr. Seitz, do you have anything else for us this evening?
I do, one little thing. I'm sorry, I know this is running on long.
No, this is fine.
But I just wanted to let you know that we did have our first meeting with Mosley Architects. And they've started a site assessment. They've started collecting the existing schedule and curriculum. We've established a date in March, which would be an evening meeting for stakeholders and we internally are starting to identify those people. So think about on the board also, if you want 1 or 2 people to participate and who you may want that to be. And then the plan is, if everything goes as scheduled, that at the June meeting, Mosley would be able to present a series of options for renovation. We're hoping for 3 options. Of course, that would be, a lesser up to a more expensive option there. We did talk about that would probably give us a range of cost, just with the way anything is. Anybody that's in the building world now knows that you can't nail down a cost right now and expect that to be accurate. So I just wanted to update you on where we are there.
Great. Exciting news. All right, is any old business to come for the board? Any new business? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? We're adjourned.
One other person.
Work on-
Oh, thank you, our board of supervisors for coming to the meeting.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Jesse,
See you
thank
tomorrow. See you tomorrow.
You're gonna sit through it back-to-back days?
Yeah.
Brave souls.
A little bit more information for them.
Well, right, it's done on our turn.
Some. Three, four.
All right. Yeah.
They were some-